So this lesson is going to be about the process that we call homeostasis, and it's very important as we study each body system that you understand this concept of homeostasis and kind of make that connection in your mind about how homeostasis is involved in each of these body systems as we see them. So let's talk about first what is homeostasis. Homeostasis is how organisms, how body systems keep things in balance. So it's about maintaining internal things constant while it's changing outside. So we talk about levels of all kinds of things, pH, oxygen, glucose, all of these different things. We talk about how, the body has to keep the right amount of those things, hormones, everything. And homeostasis is the process by which the body does that, keeps those things constant. So it's about all the human body systems working together. And I want you to understand that it's a dynamic process, that it's not like the body is constant 100% of the time. It fluctuates a little bit. It goes a little up, then it goes a little down, and it goes a little up, and it goes a little down. And so it's always changing, and it's always adjusting. Now, the purpose of homeostasis, remember, is to keep things from having too big of a change, too much glucose, not enough glucose, too high of oxygen, not enough oxygen. Any changes like that can result in disease states or even death. So homeostasis, here are some of the things that it works on. Balance of water. So you can think about maybe the kinds of things that affect your balance of water in your body. Your salts, and these are related. Oxygen, I already mentioned. Glucose, hormones, pH, many, many more. All these systems working together to keep things constant. Now, with some exceptions, however, there are some exceptions, but most homeostatic mechanisms, most systems that maintain homeostasis are negative feedback systems. And negative feedback is where something that goes too high is returned to normal, something that goes too low is returned to normal. So it's feeding back and turning things off that are making it go too high or too low. So when levels are too high, a signal, and we can talk about the signals, a signal is going to cause a decrease. Or when levels drop too low, a signal will cause an increase. I want you to think of a homeostatic mechanism as similar to a thermostat. So you probably have a thermostat in your home, and the thermostat, in fact, I have one in the classroom, a thermostat sort of keeps track of the temperature in the room. So you go and you set, for instance, here's the setting. The cool setting here is on 72 degrees. So you go in and you turn it to 72 degrees. If the temperature of the room begins to get higher than 72, this thermostat will tell the AC to turn on and cool down the room. Likewise, if you switch it over to heat, right now it's on cool, but if you switched it to heat, you could set it at 72 if that's what you wanted. And then anytime it dropped below 72, this thermostat would tell the heater to turn on. Once it reached 72, it would then turn off again. And so it automatically will turn on the heat or the air for you. You don't have to think about it. And that's kind of how your homeostatic mechanisms work. Most of these are going to be in your brain. And what they do is they sense a level, they respond. Once it's high enough, they shut it off again. If it's too low, they respond. The level rises, they shut it off again. Now, there are specific parts of homeostatic mechanisms, 3 components. We have our stimulus, which affects our receptor. So somewhere, in this example, it's in the skin, but somewhere there is a receptor, a cell or a set of cells, a tissue that can respond to that stimulus. The receptor sends a message to the integrator, usually the brain. The integrator sends a message to an effector, which might be a muscle or a gland, and the effector will cause a response. The response to the stimulus leads to change. The change is fed back, that's why we call it feedback, fed back to the receptor. So the response here goes back and affects the receptor again. That, in fact, this response can be thought of as the new stimulus. And in negative feedback, the response of the system cancels or counteracts the effect of the original stimulus. Let's talk about some specific examples. Remember, what goes up must come down. In the system that regulates our blood glucose, we have two hormones that are released, both from the pancreas. And we'll talk more about the pancreas later. But we have insulin. You may have heard of insulin. And we have glucagon. They are both produced by different parts of the pancreas, alpha cells here, beta cells here. Insulin is released when blood glucose is too high, and glucagon is released when blood glucose is too low. What insulin does is it facilitates or helps the transport of glucose into target cells. So if blood glucose gets too high, insulin is released from the pancreas, and it basically tells those cells to take up the glucose and remove it from the blood. And then blood glucose levels drop back down to normal. Insulin is released usually after you've eaten a meal, for instance, after you've digested a meal. The opposite effect comes from glucagon. Glucagon is released when blood glucose is too low, and it actually tells the liver to break down glycogen, which has been stored in the liver, and release it as glucose, raising the blood sugar level. Glucagon might be released, for instance, if you've gone a long time without a meal. Maybe you had breakfast before you came to school, and now it's fourth period, and you're starving. At some point, glucagon will be released and relieve you of your suffering, and it will make the liver release some more glucose into the bloodstream. It raises your blood sugar level, and then you don't feel hungry anymore. So you may have noticed that you'll feel really hungry, and then it kind of goes away. That's glucagon helping you out from your suffering. So this is just a little diagram to help you to understand where the pancreas is. This is your the first part of your small intestine. And then right above here, which isn't showing, is your stomach. So up here would be your stomach, kind of laying right in here. And so this is a flat little organ about the size of your palm, and it's extremely important. Your pancreas is extremely important. It does a dual function. It secretes digestive enzymes, but it also secretes those two hormones that we talked about, insulin and glucagon. So here's another way of looking at it. If blood glucose is low, the pancreas releases glucagon, the liver breaks down glycogen and releases glucose. Then the blood glucose levels rise. If they get too high, then the pancreas releases insulin, and glucose is taken up by the body cells. Okay, and then if the blood glucose drops too low again. So this, you can think of this as just like a cycle. It just keeps going and going and going. Now at this point, I wanted to let you know that I've noticed that some students are not watching the whole video and listening to the whole video, and they just are writing the notes like it's a PowerPoint, and I don't like that. So this particular page, you don't have to write anything down, and we'll see who writes things down and who doesn't. This is a whole bunch of stuff you don't have to know about control of blood pressure. So I'm just going to let the time tick by, but your notes are finished. If you're listening to this, you can just turn this off right now. But I just going to let the time tick away.